What we're going to do today is a Corona tracker in Spring Boot. This is a finished application that we're going to build. As you can see, we list quite a few important data for each place, such as confirmed, recovered, and active. And for each of these columns, we're also going to show the changes that took place. We can also paginate, and you could search for the Netherlands or any other places. So let's get into it. First, let's go to start.spring.io. This is a great place because you can easily set up a base project with all the dependencies, and you can pretty much set up it correctly with good names, and you can set pretty much all the main components up quite quickly. So in this project we're going to use Maven, Java. We're going to use the latest release version. So as you can see, it doesn't actually say release, it just misses that part. So 2.3.0 is the latest release version. You're also going to need a group name. This is actually whatever you like. Usually this is the company's name or the app's name, so we can leave it as the example. Artifact is the module's name, so in a group you can have multiple modules. And for example, in a microservices environment, each module could perhaps be a microservice or not. So for example, we could name this app. Description is arbitrary. You just describe the project, what it does. The package name is the composition of the group and the artifact. Packaging, I'm gonna leave it as jar. This is fine because this is like a runnable zip file, so you can run this on the JVM. On the other hand, with a WAR file, you'd need to run it inside of a server such as Tomcat. And with the jar, you usually have an embedded server. Java, we're going to use Java 11, and you also need to set up the dependencies. We're going to need Spring Boot DevTools. As you can see, it provides fast application restarts and also live reloads as well. So this is quite handy tool. We're also going to need Lombok, so we don't need to write or generate that much boilerplate codes, such as basic getters and setters and certain constructors. We're also gonna use Spring Web, which is the standard blocking MVC project. It by default has a embedded Tomcat server, which is fine. Then we also gonna need a template engine such as Thymeleaf, but you could choose any other. But in this tutorial we're gonna use Thymeleaf. We could perhaps add a persistence related dependencies as well, such as a database and Spring Data JPA, but we're gonna leave that to later. So later we're also gonna need a MySql adapter, MySql driver as well, and the Spring Data JPA. Leave it to that for now. So once we click this together, we need to click on generate and then save this zip file. Then we're gonna unzip it and either open it up with IntelliJ IDE or Eclipse. Both of them have a free version. You can choose whichever you like. However, I'll be using IntelliJ IDE. So in the meantime, I've just downloaded this new base application. Okay, so once we unzipped it, we need to open it up, and what you need to do next is to open it up with either IntelliJ or Eclipse. And here you can see the basic structure of this application. So as you can see, we're going to put all the Java files, all the controllers, services, repositories, everything is going to live here in terms of Java classes. Then all the CSS, JavaScript files are going to live in the static folder, and the templates folder is going to contain the Thymeleaf template files. The application.properties file contains all the all the Spring Boot application properties, all the configurations that we're going to need. So in the future we're going to use a MySql database, and that's going to need some credentials. However, we're not going to use the .properties file, but a YAML file. So I'm going to replace this with a YAML file. Let's create it under resources. Properties.yaml. Fine. We could write all the tests into this place. As you can see, this class is annotated with add Spring Boot test, and you could write methods like this with the add test annotation, and this would start them one by one after the other. So all the automated tests could reside under this folder. You could perhaps create other packages to better structure the tests, but we're not gonna get into that. And last but not least, here's your pom.xml. This is the Maven file. You set all the dependencies here, all the required dependencies that you're gonna need in this project. So as you can see, we're using Thymeleaf, we're using the Spring Boot Starter web dependency, also using Spring Boot DevTools, Lombok, and by default we also get this starter test, so we can write tests. We also said that we're gonna use Java 11, and here's the name, the artifact ID, the group ID, the same as we said previously. So pretty much after we click this together, we got this project, which is quite neat because we can straight ahead start writing controllers, services, and templates, and we could really get something up and running quite fast. You could also see that this application class is annotated with add Spring Boot application. This specifies, so this basically tells Spring that this is a Spring Boot application, not the normal Spring application. So it's gonna wire up certain configurations by default, which are pretty good actually. If there's something that you'd like to do differently, such as using another embedded server, so say you don't want to use Tomcat, or you'd rather use Netty because of various reasons. It is by default non-blocking, so maybe it has better performance as well. But then you can actually tell Spring that you don't really want to use Tomcat, and then it's actually gonna use Netty instead. So it's not a problem, but you get some sensible defaults, or you can pretty much get up and running faster because of these sensible defaults. Okay, so let's create a controller. It's important to note that all the controller classes need to end with controller. So we're gonna create, for example, a main controller, and we also need to annotate this class with @controller annotation. So this way Spring is gonna know that this is gonna be a controller. Right, and here we can write all the methods, and each of them is gonna be a controller. So we could write, for example, public. We're gonna need string because we're gonna return a template. So in the return part of this method, we're gonna return the name of the template file. So this is gonna be string. We're gonna name it root, and we're gonna return main template. So we're gonna need to create this main template.html file. And last but not least, we're also gonna need to annotate this with @getMapping. And we also need to tell the path that it needs to monitor. Okay, so whenever the user hits, so makes a GET request on the root path, then this method is gonna be triggered, and this main template file is gonna be returned. Okay, so let's create this main template file. So main template, or actually we could create an HTML file. So main template. So with this we get some sensible defaults here. So in the title we're gonna write Corona Tracker. Okay. And in the body we could write something like hello world. Okay, so we're gonna write hello world inside this h1 header. Let's start this up. Okay, so it's, oh yeah. Another application is running, so I need to close it first because this port is currently busy. So let's start this up. So as you can see, Tomcat initialized with port 8080. Tomcat started port 8080. So as you can see, it started and the whole application is started. It took 1.6 seconds to bring it all up. And if we come here, localhost 8080, then we can see our hello world application. So as you can see, we're actually hitting the root, and so we're generating a GET request to the root path, and then, so because of this annotation, this get mapping annotation on the root path, this method gets triggered. This is called, and we return the main template, which is here. So as you can see, this is pretty cool. However, we can add another cool thing too. So we could add some models as well. So if you write model, We also need to import this model class. Then we can actually inject certain variables into our templates. So if you write model.add attribute, the first one's gonna be the variable's name. So this is gonna be test1, and the next one is the value. We're gonna write hello user. So what we just did is we actually inject actual data into our template, so into this main template. So we set a variable and enrich it with hello user. However, we could also use a object as well. So let's try it out. Let's create a h2 header, and we are gonna write this, and it's called test1. We could use it this way too, or we could write it another way too, and it's like this. So we're gonna need th, so this is Thymeleaf specific tags, so we're gonna need th text, and then the variable, which is test1. And then what we're gonna do is just rebuild the project. So this is actually quite fast. As you can see, it only took 0.3 seconds compared to 1.6, and this is so we got this with Spring DevTools. If we hit refresh, we can see that both of these variables are injected into our template, which is quite nice, because this is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now we have a basic understanding how Spring MVC works. So as you can see, so MVC stands for Model View Controller. So obviously we're going to need the controller. This is the controller, the C part. We need a model. This is the model. So this is the data part. Here we can inject data into the template, and the template is the view. So Model View Controller, MVC. You have the controller, the model, and the template as the view layer. Okay, so this must be clear now. So now we're going to head over to where our data resides. So let's go to GitHub, and inside the search field, let's type in COVID-19. As you can see, this is Johns Hopkins University's repository that is updated daily with the newest data available. So if we click on this folder and then to the daily reports, we can see all the data that is available. So if we scroll down to the last one, then we can actually see the way it's structured. So as you can see the confirmed cases, deaths, recovered, active, and you also have a combined key. So we're going to use these data. So first of all, let's just download it, and once we download it, we're going to load it into Spring. process it, and then enrich our template with it. We're gonna download this file, so hit on right click and save link as. Then we're gonna head over to our IntelliJ. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a variable called CSV file, and this is gonna hold the path to our CSV file. So you're gonna write. So this is I'm using Linux, so this may be different for you, but in Linux you need to do it this way. Then this is my username. So if you have a different username, then you must have a different one. You're gonna use yours here, and then I downloaded it to the download folder. And last but not least, we need to use this CSV file, so we're gonna use it. Okay, so what we're gonna need now is a CSV processor. So let's get back to our pom.xml, and we're gonna include a CSV handler. We're gonna use OpenCSV. We're gonna import changes here. Okay, so once we have this, we can head back to our controller. Okay, so I'm gonna copy some code over to make this a little bit faster. Okay, so we have a reader, so this is this reader. We instantiate it and give it a file reader inside a CSV file, so this path. So the file reader gets this path to our Corona CSV, and we give this file reader to CSV reader, and then we have this line string array, and we say that we're gonna load the whole line. So this file has many lines, so each line is gonna be stored temporarily in this string array, and this is gonna loop over the whole file until it's over. Okay. And we're also gonna need a few other stuff. So because, as you know, while reading a file, many exceptions could occur. Therefore, we need to encompass this into a try-catch block. Yeah, so it complained because this bracket was missing. Okay, so basically this will go through the whole file, and if there's an error, then if there's an IO exception, then we're gonna print out the whole stack trace and once everything's over, even if it catches, so even if it throws an exception, then finally it's gonna close the reader. Okay, so once we have this, we actually need to skip the first line, because the first line contains all the column names. So we're gonna create a variable here, and if this variable equals to 0, then we're gonna increase it. Okay, and with this, this is gonna be fine. So this way, we're gonna skip the first line. Okay, so now, let's create a POJO. POJO stands for Plain Old Java Object. And let's call it Corona, and this is a class. And as you remember, we're using Lombok. And why are we using Lombok? Well, because with Lombok we can do something like this, add getter, and this way all the fields that we're gonna have here will get a getter generated. However, we can also use this, add setter, or add all args constructor, which is like a constructor that requires all the arguments as required. And we can have no args constructor. We can also have toString, and it generates a toString. And there are many others as well. But perhaps we could add builder, which is pretty much like returning the object once we set a field. So, for example, we set the location name, such as the country name, and then we return the object a bit. So this way we can chain the whole object population logic one after the other. Okay, so which fields we're gonna need? We're gonna need the active, we're gonna need recovered, we're also gonna need confirmed, and we should store the last update as well in a local datetime object. And last but not least, we're gonna use the combined key. first of all, let's fire it up. Okay, and let's hit refresh here. Okay, so everything the same. So we have an exception. It says no such file or directory. Yeah, this may be that because this is downloads. So I'm restarting the project. Let's start it again. Okay, so the error is gone now. So it basically goes through the file and actually doesn't do anything with it. So let's do something with it. So for each line, we're gonna instantiate a Corona object, new Corona, and then so here we're using the noargs constructor. However, we could also use the allargs constructor, or we could use the builder as well. So we could actually chain all the setters one after the other, but for now we're going to use the setters. So first of all, Corona dot set confirmed. We're going to need that, and this is the this is going to be line 8th. So this is actually going to be the 8th tag. Okay, and as you can see, by default this is a string because we have a string array. So we need to cast this to long dot value of. Okay, so we're gonna cast this to long and then set this as the confirmed. We're also gonna set the recovered, and this is gonna be long as well. And recovered is the 10th, therefore this is number 9. Also need the active long dot value of, and this is line 10. Let's set the combined key as well, and we're gonna use this as the location name. This is line 11. Actually the 12th, but line 11 because we're counting from 0. And last but not least, we're gonna store the last update field as well, and we're gonna as we can see from this Corona class, this is actually a local date time, so we're gonna store it that way. So corona.set last update, and for this actually we're gonna need a datetime formatter. Datetime formatter. Datetime formatter of pattern, because we have the data like this. So pretty much this is the year dash month dash day, and then space, hour, minute, and then seconds. Okay, so let's use this. So local date time dot parse, and we're gonna use line 4. So the actually not line 4, but the fourth object in the line, because as you know, so we're actually separating all the tokens inside of this line into a string array, and each token is actually accessed by this line, and then in bracket the number. So line bracket 4 is actually the 5th token, and then last but not least we're gonna give it this formatter. Okay, so with this for each line we're gonna populate a Corona object. For now we're not gonna save anything, we're just gonna print it out. So we could actually use the logger. So Lombok has this pretty good annotation called log4j, with which we can pretty much log this, start logging. Oh yes, so not log4j but slf4j. Yes, so we need this, and then we can just write log.info, and as you know, we previously annotated this Corona Pojo, which stands for plain old Java object, with @toString. So this is Lombok's toString generator. So you can use this. So we're gonna print this Corona object to the terminal. So let's hit refresh. Okay, and then let's hit refresh here too. And as you can see, it went through all the lines and actually populated a object for each line. Okay, so now we have this. We can actually start setting our persistence layer up. So we're gonna be using MySql, and we're also gonna be using JPA. And you know, with JPA we also have Hibernate as well. So let's go to our POM, and we're gonna need the JPA starter, and we're also gonna need the MySql connector. Okay, so once we have this, we need to go to our properties.yaml file, and then you're gonna populate it like this. So pretty much we're telling Spring to use this data source. The URL is jdbc :MySql, and then this is localhost with MySql port. Corona is the database name, and I'm using this as well. Username is root and password is arbitrary. So this can be different for you. Inside JPA we say DTL auto should be update. So whenever there's a change in the schema, so inside our Corona POJOB, which is gonna be actually an entity from now on, then Hibernate should update it and synchronize it. So this entity should match the one in MySql. Okay, so once we have this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna annotate this with @entity. Oh yes, I forgot to import the changes. Yes, so we're gonna import the entity class. It actually comes. Oh yes, so we're gonna need a primary key as well. Not a problem. So we're gonna write long ID, and this is actually an ID, and this is a column. Yes, so we can actually write the column name explicitly. So we can either use this or implicitly leave it to Hibernate and JPA to create names. And then updatable is gonna be false and unique true. And last but not least, we also need a generated value. Oops. And the strategy is generation type dot identity. Okay, so this is we don't need to worry about this anymore. So this field is gonna be updated automatically. Okay, so next you're also gonna need a repository. And it's very important that it needs to end with the name repository. Okay, and this is not a class but an interface. We need to annotate it with @repository, and it needs to extend JPA repository Okay. So with this, we could actually inject this repository here, and later on we're going to use our service for that. But for now we're gonna just auto-wire it here. So let's do it. So we're gonna write corona repository, and we're gonna annotate it with that auto-wired. Okay. Yes, so field injection is not recommended. Yes, this is true because it's actually harder to test the classes properly if you do field injection. Therefore, constructor injection is the preferred way. But for now, this is gonna be fine. Okay, so once we have this, we can use this corona repository to actually save these objects. So I'm gonna use the save method and give our corona object to it. Okay, so for each line we're gonna create a corona object, populate it, and then save it into a database. However, there's one last thing we need to do first. So here's my terminal, and I actually need to create a database. So we need to create this corona database first. So -u root and -p, and here comes my password. Okay, and then we need to create a database called corona. Okay, so this is the only thing that was needed. We can exit and then restart the application. Okay, so there's some problem here. Oh yes, so the problems that we forgot to annotate our application here with at enable JPA repositories, and because of this, Spring is gonna look for all the repositories and it's gonna configure them automatically. So let's reload them. Reload the application again. So we still have some problem. So fail to determine a suitable driver class. Why we actually do this? That's interesting. Okay, so now we could perhaps do something like this. So invalidate caches and restart, because this may be an IntelliJ bug. So let's do this. No, it wasn't IntelliJ. So let's re-import the Maven dependencies. And try again. Oh, yes. So the problem is that, as you remember, we had an application.properties file. However, we deleted it and replaced it with this YAML file that we named properties.yaml, and this actually needs to be application.yaml. So if we create a application.yaml file and paste everything here and delete this one and fire up the application, then they should be fine. They should, yes, it starts without any problem. Okay, so let's go here and hit refresh. And as you can see, it goes through all the lines one by one. However, the ID is null. Welcome back. So the problem was that if you actually take a look here, so what we're actually doing here, so we create this Corona object, we populate it. However, as you can see, there's no ID, there's no setter for the ID because the ID is set automatically. And we're logging here, so obviously this is gonna be null. However, if we put it here, so we're actually saving it, so we're saving it, therefore the ID population and the generation of the population happens as well, then this is gonna be fine. This is gonna work now. So all the time there was no problem with the application. We just had the logger in the wrong location. So as you can see, the ID is increasing, and all the lines are processed and stored in the database. Okay, so once we have this, we could then okay, so what we could do now is actually use a web address instead of this file that is available locally. So what we need, so to get this, what we need to do is the following. So we're going to need a URL, new URL, and then we're going to use the GitHub repository that we saw previously. And we're gonna use today's date, so 6th of June. 6th of June. Yes. And actually this can throw an exception. and then we're gonna need a HTTP URL connection. And we're gonna open this connection first, and we're gonna cast this to HTTP URL connection. Let's throw instead a IO exception here. So we're also gonna need a response code, and we're gonna check what the response code is. Get response code. And if we have a 200, which is the OK, then we're gonna log to the terminal that successfully connected to GitHub. And we're gonna copy this part, this whole thing, over here. And instead of this CSV reader, we're gonna use, we're gonna use a CSV reader, but first we're gonna need a buffered reader. New buffered reader, and this needs a new input stream reader, and we're gonna give our HTTP URL connection input stream, and and here comes the reader. So this is gonna be the CSV reader, and we're giving it this input variable. Okay, so with this small change, we can actually, semicolon is needed here. So with this small change, we can actually pull our data from GitHub directly. And later on we can automate this with a scheduled process as well. So let's try it out. Oops. Yeah, so semicolon was missing here too. Okay, so let's start it up. Let's check it. So there was a problem because this if part wasn't triggered. So this must have been a different response code. So if we log the response code, then we can know exactly what was given. Oops. But I think we're gonna need to use the fifth, I guess. So as you can see, it's 404, so there's no resource like this. So if we modify it to the fifth and reload it, then as you can see, it's working and it's populating the database. So let's continue with some refactoring. So as you remember, we just auto-wired this Corona repository. However, we should rather use a service for that, and also use constructor injection. So let's create a service file, service class. We're gonna name it as Corona service. So this is actually where all the business logic should reside. We need to annotate it with add service, and we're gonna inject our repository here. So we're gonna create a Corona repository here, and gonna create a constructor, and this way we injected it with constructor. So this is a constructor injection, dependency injection. Okay, so once we have this, we can create a save method. So we're gonna go ahead and public void save. So we're gonna give it a Corona object, and we're gonna use our recently wired repository to save it. Okay, and we're gonna use this service rather than directly the repository in our controller. Yes, so we're deleting this, and we're gonna say something like this. Corona service. We're gonna use constructor injection here as well. Yes, and we're gonna use this. So now we have this. Yeah, so you could move this whole thing into another service. So let's copy this over to Corona service, public void populate database. Here we actually don't need. Yes, we need to annotate it with SLF4J, so we don't have problem with the loggers. Yes, so this can throw some exceptions. here we're gonna move back to current repository. Okay. So once we have this, we could just pull it from here if we wanted to. Current service dot populate database, and then this would be the same as if it were here. So now that we have this, we could perhaps create another controller. So with this controller, we're gonna populate the database, and then with this controller, we're gonna actually inject some data into this template. So we could go ahead and do something like find by last update. So we're gonna create this method. It's gonna query our database, and we're gonna give it yesterday's date. Now minus days 1. So this is a local date object that is representing yesterday. Okay, so once we have this, let's create this method, and this actually need to return a list of Corona objects. Okay, we're giving it local date, local date, and here in the return statement we're gonna write Corona repository dot, and we're gonna find by last update. As you know, we have this last update field, so last update, and between, and actually this is gonna need 2 arguments. So we're gonna give it local date time, because last update is stored in local date time, so we need to use 2 local date times to use the between keyword. Time of, and then here comes our local date time of, and here comes yesterday state, and the time is gonna be min, and the other one's gonna be max. So same as this, but with max. So from the start of the date until the end of it, we want all the data that is stored in our database. So let's go ahead and create this repository. Okay, and it's created. This is from to, and yes, so this should work. Okay, so once we have this, then we could inject this into our model. So we're going to create an attribute. And last but not least, we need a variable. We're gonna name it corona data. Okay, so this corona data is gonna hold yesterday's data, all the corona objects and that we have yesterday. And then what we do next is we could perhaps style this HTML file a little bit so it would look a little bit nicer. So let's go ahead and add Materialized Css Suite. So here's our CSS, and it also has a JS file. This is how I usually put the end of the HTML, so around here, and this way we can actually load our page faster. And then let's create a navigation bar. So nav, and this is gonna be using the teal class. So this is a greenish color, and then we'll have a div nav wrapper, and then finally we'll have a link. With brand logo as class, and we're gonna name it as Corona Tracker. Okay, so now we have a nav bar. What we need to do now is to actually represent our table, so our data in a table. So let's create a container. And inside of this container div, we're gonna have a table. And we're gonna have a few table headers. We're going to use place for our combined key. Then we're going to have confirmed and active and recovered. Okay, and then we're gonna loop over our data. So th each, this is a for each loop. We're gonna give it our corona data, and this corona is gonna be the currently looped object. So corona data. Okay. And then with the th text, you can now write corona.combined key. Confirmed active and recovered, and let's actually start this up. Okay, so we have some problem here. Oh yes, so the problem is that we're trying to bind to the same path with multiple controllers, so this is obviously a problem. So let's change it to perhaps 2. Oh yes, so as you can see, we put the business logic into our service class and it still gets called, so this is not a problem. It's working fine. However, we should have triggered the /2 controller. Okay, so this has a problem as well. So let's debug this. Okay, so corona data. Yes, so this $sign needs to be here. So let's rebuild it. Okay, so as you can see, here's our new navbar. Here are the table headers. So our hello world variables are called as well, and there's nothing here. And we need to figure out why is that. Okay, so we have an exception here. Or perhaps this may be our previous one. Let's restart this properly. Okay, let's refresh it. Yeah, so we still have a problem and it doesn't say anything. Okay. Yes, so maybe because I was using the day before's data. So this is yesterday's data, the data that was available yesterday, so the day before's. So let's modify this to the 6th now, and let's populate the database, and then once we do this, we should be able to see some values. Okay, so let's populate it with yesterday's data, and then we're gonna fire up the number 2 path. Okay, so it's over. Oops, I shouldn't have done this. Okay, so /2. Okay, so let's try first to find everything. Find all. Okay, so this is gonna find everything. Okay, so as you can see, we have some data in our database. As you can see, the confirmed, active and recovered for each combined key that we call place. So there's some problem with this query. So we're giving it yesterday and querying between the start and the end of yesterday. Let's add the last update as well. Update. Let's use the find all. Uh, 25th. The 7th. Oh yes. So problems here. We don't need a minus days part. Mean. Oh boy. Yeah, so the problem was that I forgot to change this main to max, because, so as you remember, I copied this over to here. I duplicated this part as the second argument. However, I forgot to change the min to a max. So we can delete this part, so we're not gonna need that. And if we hit rebuild, then this last update's gonna be disappeared. Okay. So we don't need this hello world and these test variables anymore. We can clean these up a little bit, and this database population shouldn't actually be here either. They should be a scheduled process. So ideally, we shouldn't be calling this from a controller, but we could rather do something like this. So with this add scheduled annotation, we can give this a cron job where we can set where this should be triggered, when this should be triggered. So if we say 0, 4 and 3 stars, then this is gonna be triggered every day at 4 AM in the morning, and updates our database with the latest data. And then we can go ahead to let's modify this a little bit. So rename it as test, and this is gonna be the root path. So test method, this one, yeah, test method. This is gonna be root. So if we reload the application, so restart the application, then everything's fine. So we have our scheduled process that populates our database every day, and we also have this root path that shows oh yes, so we remove this path. We're gonna add all the changes, so the confirm changes, active changes and recover changes, and we're gonna be using the day before's data for that and compare it to the yesterday's data. And with this way we're gonna have the difference between them. Let's get into it. So we're gonna need a few more fields here. So let's write long confirmed changes, long recovered changes, and long active changes. Okay, so these three are gonna be our new fields. We're gonna store the changes in them. So this scheduled process, this scheduled function updates our database every day. However, we are not storing any changes compared to previous days, so we should add this. Okay, first thing first, we need to be able to tell if we have processed any day so far or this is gonna be the first day, because if this is the first day, then we won't be able to calculate the differences. So we're gonna write some logic for that. So if this corona list, and we're gonna write a new method find by combined key. So we're gonna query our database by the combined key, and we're gonna give these objects combined key. Okay, and we're gonna write the same. So in the current repository, we're gonna write this and give the parameter as well. Okay. And then, so obviously, if this doesn't return anything, then we don't have anything in our database. On the other hand, if it's actually not empty, then we can go ahead and do our logic. So corona list is empty, and we're negating it. So if it's not empty, then we're gonna populate the changes columns, set confirmed changes, and we're gonna get confirmed and then subtract the latest from that list. Corona.get, and we're gonna get the latest. So this is gonna be corona list.size. So this way we're gonna be able to tell the proper index of it and get confirmed. Okay, so we're subtracting from the current confirmed number the last object from this list, and we're gonna do the same with the others as well. So set recovered changes, get recovered, get recovered. Okay, and last but not least, set active changes, get active, get active. Okay, so with this schedule process will automatically update our database properly with the changes as well that took place. However, for now we actually need a method that first fetches the day before's data, and then using the day before's data we should get yesterday's as well, and this way yesterday is gonna be populated with the confirmed changes as well. Let's first drop this database. MySql root -p, and here comes my password. Drop database corona create database corona. We are creating it again, so we have an empty database now. What we need to do next is, so we're gonna call this populate database, but first we're gonna create a copy from this. And this is just for demonstrating this, and this way we don't need to wait a few days. So I updated the day, so this is gonna be the day before, and this is gonna be yesterday. That's fine, and we don't need this logic. Actually, we can leave this here as well. Okay, so here, so we need the name of this method, so we're gonna call this method first and then the other one. So this one's gonna populate the database with the day before's data and then the yesterday's. Okay, so let's fire it up. And then head over to our browser. So these are still the day before's data, because you can see we have many nulls for the changes columns. And as soon as we get to yesterday's data, these changes should reflect. Okay, so these are not nulls anymore. Okay, so we had a few here. Active changes 2, active changes 3. So we'll be able to see something in the end. Okay, so our database population has just finished. So the last thing we need to do here is to add the changes columns. So th confirmed changes. I'm just gonna copy this. Okay, so active changes and recovered changes. Gonna need confirmed changes. Oops. Active changes and recovered changes. Okay. And then we could rebuild our application. Okay, so as you can see, the changes are ready now. So let's style this page a little bit better now. So we're gonna add some logic here. So we're gonna write td, and inside this td there's gonna be a span, and here comes our logic. So corona dot confirmed changes, then we're gonna write the following. So we'll have a plus sign here, and next to that the number of confirmed changes. Okay. And this is gonna be a badge, red with white text. If it's 0, then we don't need the plus sign, and it's gonna be gray with black text with black text. And if it's smaller, it's less than 0, then it's automatically gonna have a minus sign here, and this is gonna be teal and with white text. Okay, so we're gonna use this logic, and we're gonna use the same for all the other changes as well. So active changes. And last but not least, the recovered changes. Okay. So let's rebuild the project. Oh, there's something wrong. Oh yes, we forgot to include the object. So corona.confirm changes. Yes, so we need this. Yes. So if we rebuild the project, then everything's fine. So depending on the changes, so if we have a reduction in the number of cases, then it's green, and if it increases, then it's red and gray if no changes. Okay, so what we're gonna do next is move this corona checker to the center. So we're gonna also add data tables with which we get pagination and a search field. Okay, so we're gonna need DataTables CSS and jQuery, and last but not least DataTables JavaScript file. And we also need to do some changes to our table, so we need to add t-head here, and t-body to the rest. We need to give this table an ID. So it's gonna be Corona table. And let's give it a class as well. It's gonna be striped. And last but not least, we need to initialize data tables. So this is gonna initialize it. So let's rebuild it and refresh the page. We need this in the center. Yes, and last but not least, we're gonna add a paragraph here, because this comes with some default styles. So we're gonna need some padding here. Yes, so with this, the application is gonna look nice. Yes, as you can see, here's our final application. We get some paginations here as well. We could implement some JPA based, so Spring Data based pagination as well. But here we're just loading everything we have, and then use data tables to sort and paginate. So we could go to Netherlands to see some information, or to France. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one. Oh yeah, and be sure to subscribe and like the video if you liked it. Thanks.